why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's the
answer? Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
To start off tonight, obviously, we come off the heels, and the reason why we're doing the show later is because we just came off of that CNN Trump town hall with Kaitlin Collins, all right? And I'm sure many of you guys have watched it, but if you have not, I will just summarize it for you in one single sentence. It was kind of a mess. I think it was a good mess for Donald Trump, but regardless, the entire thing is a mess, okay? And so I was going to react to it live, but I don't know, DMCA, whatever. I will show you some clips, but I do want to kind of give the summary, the rundown for those people who do not see it. So we start off this town hall, and for about the first 30 minutes, Kaitlin Collins, CNN reporter, you may remember her back from the Trump days, the whole time is just like, January 6th, election stuff, Mr. Trump, no. So immediately, and there's a purpose for this, right? Instead of going in and talking about actual substantive issues, which we really break down, it was only about half an hour of the debate, okay? So the first half hour, she won't shut up about election, January 6th, Mr. Trump, Mr. Trump. And then, there's another half hour where they actually have a decent talk about substantive issues. And then the last 10 or 20 so minutes, it's you're being investigated, you're Mr. Trump. So let me start off by saying this to Kaitlin Collins, to CNN. Not that you guys necessarily care what I have to say, but, it's called a town hall, okay? So the reason it is called a town hall is because the town is supposed to come to the hall and ask the questions, okay, Kaitlin Collins, you understand this? It is not a CNN hall. It is not the Kaitlin Collins hall. The purpose of a town hall is not for the journalist to go and just debate the candidate. Okay, that's not what it is. It's not a debate between Kaitlin Collins and Donald Trump. It's not supposed to be. It's actually supposed to be a thing where the voters go and ask the questions. And we got about a couple voters ask the questions for like one single sentence, but the vast majority of the time, it's just Kaitlin Collins. She's not even really asking questions. She's just straight up debating, and that's what's basically going on here, okay? So the first entire half hour of this debate, this is all it is, and this one clip basically sums it up right here. This, for you, basically is the first half hour of the debate. I kid you not.
The judge wouldn't allow us to put that in. Her dog or her cat was named Vagina. The judge wouldn't allow to put that in. All of these things. But with her, they can put in anything. Access Hollywood.
You might think, oh, you're joking about that, Vince. No, come on. It wasn't real. No, I'm serious. That was about the entire first half of this debate, okay? Its entire first half. Now, what I will say, and what we'll get into in a second here, is that I thought, especially the first half, I mean, it's really is a draw. You're asking a lot of gotcha questions on Trump. He's sort of set up in a hard position. Immediately, they just go off, say, hey, election this, January 6th that. But what I will say is I actually thought in the second half, when they started to talk a little bit more issues, and when Trump started to come more into his own, and when Kaitlin Collins just started to come off more and more annoying, I actually thought the second half of the town hall went quite well for Donald Trump. But that first half hour or so, I'm not even necessarily saying I think Donald Trump lost, quote unquote. I don't think that would be accurate. But what does it do? Immediately, it muddies the waters, right? It muddies the waters. Immediately, instead of making this a substantive town hall, it's, hey, this and that, you know what I mean? Just dragging his name through the mud. And I guess that's what's to be expected here. But, just to point that out, the first entire half hour of this thing is just Kaitlin Collins yelling at him about nonsense, and that's what it is. Now, with that said, half an hour in, they start talking about the actual political issues, which we'll bring up here, and that's why I have Twitter pulled up here. And I actually thought Donald Trump answered a lot of these questions quite well. And honestly, I think in many ways, this dynamic is a dynamic he needs to pursue more often in the future, because I think when it comes to his speeches, right, that's what Donald Trump's historically been known for. It's those big, grand, amazing speeches. But let's be honest, right? And we all know this. I mean, I know some people might get mad, a handful, but most people would agree, right? Trump is older now. Okay, he doesn't have the energy he used to. And I know the people who don't want him to be the nominee would bring that up as a red flag, but I think we all kind of agree to an extent. He just does not have the same level of energy. I don't think he's lost his mind by any stretch. I think he's still the same guy, but just, a little bit older. And so because of that, you could make the argument, and I think if you watch some Trump speeches lately, arguably you could say they're kind of boring. At least just lower energy than they used to be. But I think this format right here, I've seemed to notice that Trump really thrives in. When he's being asked questions by other people, when he's responding to other people. This is not, there's a rally a few months ago that he actually answered questions at. I think this is a good format. I think this is a good dynamic for Trump. And I thought he did pretty decently in this position. I think he needs to do that more often. Now, with that said, I have Twitter open here. We can react to some of the actual clips of Trump answering these questions in the town hall, so I can give you the kind of summary of how this all went here. So here, let me open Twitter here. I liked all the important clips that I was a fan of. So obviously, there was the one you saw in the beginning, and like I said, this basically sums up the town hall itself right here. This one clip right here.
I think is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's the answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
So, that right there, just vintage Donald Trump. Vintage Donald Trump, That reminds me 2016, it's the same energy of, come on, try getting it out. Try getting it out, right? This is a classic clip. This is going to be a meme clip for a long time. I think this is very good. And it also summarizes, and the reason why I think it's just such a huge L, and I'll get to your super chats in a second, guys, so keep sending them in. I'll read them in a second. But part of the reason I think is just such a massive L, such a massive optical disaster for CNN is, to your average person who might be watching that doesn't even like Donald Trump necessarily, which does exist. There's a lot of independents that are not the biggest fans of him. Still, they have to watch something like this, and, all you see is this annoying woman on CNN constantly interrupting, not even giving him a chance to speak, constantly, as you can tell, just asking bad faith questions, won't let him speak, all this stuff. And in many ways, what it's actually doing is making a bigger martyr of Donald Trump than he already is becoming, and so this is the effects we've seen the last few months. He was actually struggling. At the beginning of the year, he was struggling a little bit in the polls. It was kind of neck and neck with DeSantis. And then what happens, right? The left just throws him a bone, and then you have the indictment. That made his approval rating go up. And even his approval rating has gone up after this phony defamation case. And then here you have the same thing, right? Even for the independents out there that are not the biggest fans of Donald Trump, they look at a video like this, they look at a dynamic like this and think, well, I feel kind of bad. I wish they would actually let him speak. And so that, that's his clip right here. That basically sums it up. Again, that's classic vintage Donald Trump. Okay. But anyways, here we go. We get to some of the issues here. This was part of his response to the abortion question, which I'll play, it's only 13 seconds, but I'll kind of summarize for you what he said about abortion and why I actually thought that was a pretty masterful answer from a political perspective. But first, let me just play the 13 seconds I have here.
People that will kill a baby in the 9th month or the 8th month or the 7th month or after the baby is born, they're the radicals, not the pro-life.
I just want to give you...
So... obviously it's going to come up that Kaitlin Collins tries to ask him about abortion. And I thought that the way he answered the whole kind of abortion question was very tactical and very good from a political perspective, right? So on one hand, he did not alienate the pro-lifers. He did not go out and say anything that would actively make pro-lifers upset. But at the same time, he navigated it in a way that, also at the same time seems more politically moderate, if that makes sense, right? So they go out there and immediately what does he do? He turns the abortion issue on its head, which is masterful, right? And instead of defending the pro-life position actively, instead what he does is kind of flips it on his head and says, well, look at the pro-choice side, and this is true. They want 9-month abortion. They are radicals. They are the radical ones, not us, right? From a political perspective, I think that's smart, because all that we have heard about pro-lifers and obviously I'm 100% pro-life, but all that you hear in moderate, independent, suburban America is the pro-lifers are the crazy radical ones, this and that. Well, what does Donald Trump say? Immediately he says, no, it's not the pro-lifers that are radical. It is the pro-choicers that are radical. And one of the talking points he brings up here actually is that with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that gave pro-lifers something to negotiate with, a type of negotiating tool that they did not have before, right? He sort of brings that up. So he kind of paints his image where it's the pro-choice, and by the way, I think that's pretty accurate, but he paints his image where it's the pro-choicers constantly cramming down radical ideas on the pro-lifers, sets up the pro-lifers to kind of be the victims in this story. And like I said, I think it's very masterful from a political perspective. They also ask him, if brought to your desk, would you sign a 15, not a 15-week, just would you sign a federal ban on abortion? And he kind of dodges the question. He doesn't say yes or no. He says, I'm going to do what's best for the country, right? Which, obviously you might look at that politician answer. He should just be honest, whatever. But also, I would say, like I said, I think that on this abortion issue, that's probably the best way from an electoral perspective for a Republican to approach it, right? Is kind of just say enough, don't say too much, right? Because if you go out there and say, yes, I will, suburban moderate America is not going to like that. But if you go out and say, no, if you got to say, no, I won't, that's not a pro-life position. And so I think the best way politically on a national level for Republicans to approach the issue of abortion is basically to be like Donald Trump, right? We can legislate, we can make policy that is completely conservative and 100% pro-life, but simultaneously, we don't even have to make that the focus of the campaign, right? We can even turn this issue on its head and say, actually, it's the pro-choicers that are the radical ones. Don't look over here, look over there. It's very tactful politics. I thought Donald Trump actually navigated this issue quite well. And we got a $10 super chat from Burgundy Blue. I know we got some earlier. Let me get through this whole coverage first, and then we'll answer the super chats. But like I said, I'm keeping track of them, so don't worry, guys. All right, so that was the abortion issue. Like I said, I thought he handled this quite well. Because really, I mean, we know it's a hard issue to navigate for Republicans. It's kind of a political landmine. We understand that, right? But he didn't say anything that alienated pro-lifers, which he has said in the past, and I didn't like that. He did not alienate the pro-lifers, which was good, but he also did not get that soundbite of him saying anything super radical that can be used in a campaign ad to appeal to like suburban moderates. So like I said, I think from a political perspective, and you might get mad at me even for saying, well, he should just be 100% principled about this. I understand that, not disagreeing. I'm just saying that from a political perspective, in terms of trying to win this election while also standing for pro-life values, I think this is the right way electorally to navigate the issue. So that was the abortion question here. Here you have this one. I mean, this one was not anything particularly all that crazy, but this college Republicans member kind of grills him on the bump stock thing and says, why did you ban bump stocks? Are you going to protect the Second Amendment? Here's him just saying he's going to protect the Second Amendment.
St. Anselm, he's a member of college Republicans. He's an undeclared voter right now. He supported you in 2020. Bobby, what's your question for President Trump?
Hi, thank you for coming. This is a bit of a pivot, but with gun violence and mass shootings in the news cycle recently, I'm worried that state governments and the federal government are going to act to repress gun rights. Under your administration, you instructed the Department of Justice and the ATF to ban bump stocks. If elected president again, how would you act not only to defend our Second Amendment rights, but to restore rights that have been taken from us, such as, by example, recently the ATF's ruling on the pistol stabilizing braces?
Yeah, as you know, the bump stocks are actually a very unimportant thing. And NRA, I went with them, and they said it doesn't mean anything. They're actually, all they do is teach you how to shoot very inaccurately. So we did that. There's been nobody that's protected the Second Amendment, as you know, like I have. I protected it through thick and thin, not easy to do. But we have a very big mental health problem in this country. And again, it's not the gun that pulls the trigger. It's the person that pulls the trigger. And we have to protect our Second Amendment. We have to protect our Second Amendment.
So, pretty generic answer, though, but I did think it was good. Shout out to this kid. I did think it was good. I think someone ought to ask him about a question like that. Like, hey, what about bump stocks? Are you going to protect the Second Amendment? It is important. I think it is good for Donald Trump that he kind of come to grips or be confronted with at least some of the mistakes, quote unquote, that he made in his first term. And, honestly, if you were to ask me, I think deep down he does see it as a mistake. I don't think it would happen again, right? I think if there are mass shootings, which there are always mass shootings, but if there's something like that happens again under his next presidency, if he ends up being the next president, which hopefully he does, right? Hopefully freaking, the character in the White House right now does not win a second term. I'm personally, I don't really think that Trump would cave to the gun mob ever again, right? 2018, 2019 or so, I think what you saw after Parkland, after Las Vegas, all that stuff, there was sort of the Republican mistake. Rick Scott, too. Rick Scott, governor of Florida at the time, he passed a sort of stupid gun control bill, all this stuff. And I think that came to such whiplash so much in their face. It did not gain any It did not improve their support, did not improve support of Republicans at all among anti-gun people, but it did piss off a lot of people. It pissed off a lot of, pro-gun people. Honestly, I don't think it's a mistake that, Donald Trump will make again, and I'm pretty convinced of that. So then that was the Second Amendment part. I just thought it was good that someone asked them about it. Here's the iconic talking about the
judge wouldn't allow us to put that in. Her dog or her cat was named Vagina. The judge wouldn't allow to put that in. All of these things but with her they can put in anything. Access Hollywood. The judge would.
Oh, I mean, there you have it. Besides the clips I have here, the truth of the matter is there was not a lot of substantive debate at all whatsoever in this town hall, right? There are two other issues I don't have pulled up here on Twitter, but he was asked about Russia and Ukraine. He gave a very good answer, an answer I 100% agree with. He goes out there and says, well, look, and when it comes to the issue of aid and defense, because he also understands to an extent, well, there are people out there who don't really like Russia, but what he goes out there and says, why isn't Europe dealing with this, right? And so and that's always been his thing, and that's sort of what he ran on in 2016 too. It's like, why are we the ones always funding and taking care of the rest of the world? And so he kind of brings that up. And then what he says that was kind of, I guess, monumental, kind of groundbreaking. He says day one he's going to negotiate a peace deal there, which I think we absolutely need, right? We need a reasonable peace deal in Russia and Ukraine that, adequately satisfies both sides. And I know the liberals, Kaitlin Collins did it. They always do it whenever I bring this up and say, hey, we do actually need some type of mutual agreement in Ukraine and just end the bloodshed. They always, so you want Russia to win? So you want Putin to win? It's like, come on, let's actually be realistic about the situation. The idea that that Zelensky, no matter how good Ukraine is fighting, is going to be able to drive Russia back to its pre-2014 borders. And honestly, I take it a step further than that. The idea that in the end, victory is not in some degree inevitable for Russia. I mean, let's be honest. Does anyone really believe that that is not the case? We know that with enough time, with enough bloodshed, with enough suffering, no matter how much money we give to Ukraine, which obviously is a lot, how much arms we give them, at the end of the day, if Russia wants to win this war, they're going to win this war, right? And so, my stance is you can either try to figure out something now that might actually be a decent agreement for Ukraine. Because to Ukraine's credit, I will give them credit on this. The idea when Russia first invaded was that they're going to take over this whole country in the span of weeks. And that's not what happened. Actually, the Ukrainians put up a pretty good fight. And, the war is basically at a stalemate now. And so in my opinion, all you're basically doing at this point over inches of territory is perpetuating more bloodshed, right? More people are going to die. And for what? So that Joe Biden can go out there and say, we're not going to stop until Putin is defeated. Well, what does that mean? How many lives is that going to cost? It's ridiculous. It's genocidal, frankly. And that's what I'll say. I think anyone who looks at Donald Trump saying, day one, we want peace in Ukraine, anyone who looks at that and thinks that's the wrong answer, actually, we should not pursue peace in Ukraine. Like I said, in my opinion, genocidal, absolute maniac. Trump is absolutely right there. And, I think you'd be surprised how many Americans agree with that, right? I think you'd be surprised because there's such a mutual consensus. Oh, Putin is an evil dictator. We need to defeat him at all costs. But honestly, if you go and ask the average American, I'm curious to know, do you think they really believe that? I don't think they do. Now, I don't think the average American out there loves Vladimir Putin or loves Russia, right? Obviously, the Cold War and the memory of Russia is still in the minds of a lot of Americans, and, Putin in the Western media is a very demonized figure. So I'm not going out there and saying that I think if Trump were just directly to say, let Ukraine fall, would that be popular with a lot of Americans? No. But I think what is popular with Americans is the idea of peace. The idea of peace and kind of just the acknowledgement of reality that this is not really our fight and we might as well just try to broker some type of peace and call it a day. I think that's the moderate answer. I think that's the reasonable thing to say. And I think that that's actually going to resonate with a lot of Americans. So there was that. They talked a little bit about Title 42, which obviously we know immigration is going to be a winning issue for Trump. It always has been. But with that said, that basically sums up the summary of the CNN town hall. And you might think, it's kind of short. We glanced over a few issues here for a few minutes. But I kid you not, besides that, it's just Kaitlin Collins screaming and being an annoying woman for about an hour and 10 minutes. That's really all there was to it, okay? Hey guys, Vince Dow here. Hope you enjoyed that clip from the Vince Dow Show. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. And be sure to check out the Vince Dow Show live every weeknight here on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a great show. Many are saying this. So leave a like, check out our other clips, and be sure to check out the show. Yeah. God bless.